Here's an example of what I call #perpetual experimentation. And it's a paradigm I and others have developed where every action you take, even posting to LinkedIn, you ask yourself, how do I do alternative versions of this? Like compare these. Think of like A/B testing where you compare A and B and C, but trying to push that methodology in new ways. And one approach to that is doing things that seem unusual, but might actually have some positive consequences you're not aware of. For example, here I am posting first of all a video on LinkedIn, which is not that typical, but two, it's a video of me just walking down the road. You might think, is this person confused? Do they think they're on TikTok? Do they think they're on Instagram? Potentially, but the idea is I'm going to post this and see what are the positive consequences, what are the negative consequences, or let's be more precise, let's use decision theory. What are the probability and magnitude of positive consequences? By which I mean, what's the probability a particular positive consequence A1 happens, or A2? And then what's the magnitude? Is it like a +1, a +3, a +5? And then what's the probability and magnitude of negative consequences? Because fundamentally, approach I take as a professor and as someone who develops techniques for new kinds of A/B testing, new kinds of A/B comparisons, which again we call this #perpetual experimentation, is that we try to push the boundaries of what we know, right, of knowledge, to use techniques that might seem strange but could actually have benefit. For example, respond in the comments. What do you find is helpful about this? What do you find is a challenge? How do we adjust it? And even for me, it's hard to do this, right? Because I'm like, how can I post on LinkedIn? Well, I'm here like walking down the road, on vacation, why am I posting on LinkedIn in this way? But actually, let me see what happens. I'm sure there'll be some negative consequences because new innovations always do. But is there benefit? Is it more interesting? Is it fresh? Is it more natural? Is it that, people get to listen to a concept, not by just reading text on a page, but by actually having some background scenery to look at? So I'll close on this one. #takeaways. What do you all take away from this? Like, what would you explain, like in the comments, or send to a friend and say, hey, this video, here's what I learned from it, or here's what's interesting that made me have a thought. #could do differently. What's your next step? What's one thing you could do differently as a result of looking at this? Think of it almost like the kind of A/B comparisons, right? The #perpetual experimentation. You're on trajectory A, heading that way, heading down that path. Now you watch this. What does trajectory B look like? On trajectory A, you would have done action A1, A2, A3. Is there a way now that, having had this in mind, you go from A1, A2, A3 to B1 or B2 or B3? What's the #could do differently? For example, might you think to yourself, well, what's something that actually I think is out of the norm or different, but maybe it's actually got some value? Why don't I kind of experiment in a way to see what the impact could be? Or maybe you think to yourself, well, what is this whole perpetual experimentation thing? What's the kind of idea? You might ask a comment, I can send you all some information, or take a look at my website, there are papers there. Or maybe it inspired some thought to you, and you're like, I normally do A1, let me try A2 in a low-cost way with a couple of people. But the key thing is, in my mind, some of the point of knowledge is actually to help you think differently, right? Or at least identify the thoughts that could be different. If I watch a video, or if I hear someone talk to me, I ask myself, how is my action A1, the path I was on before this video, how could it be different? I may not do it differently, but how could it be? So whenever someone talks to me and says something, I'm like, I was going to do A1, but actually let me think about B1 instead. Even something as simple as conversation in the grocery this morning, I'm always trying to think of like, how could what that person said, what they taught me in that conversation in line with the grocery, how could it be different? So one more time, #takeaways. What do you take away? What do you tell someone about this? You can add in the comments or just send a link to someone. Not trying to get more links or things on LinkedIn. I'm just trying to help you all identify knowledge that could be useful. And #could do differently. What's one or two things you could do differently about this? Happy New Year!